Good evening, everyone. And he took the tape off for me this time. Welcome to our final public comment meeting for the ARPA funds that was given to the city of Harrisburg. My name is Gina Roberson. I am the special advisor to the mayor, community affairs. And tonight, we have Heather and Tom with us tonight from NW Financials. And we would love, last night's meeting was great. Had a bunch of questions, new questions, and you got your answer right on the spot. So we would like to stay in that vein and keep flowing with the questions because we have them here to answer all of your questions. If they cannot answer your questions, believe you me, they go back to their offices and sit down and talk it over, and then they email us back the questions, the answers to your questions. So, tonight I think we have our City Council President Danielle Bowers is here. We have Council Member Westbourne Majors is here. And I don't think I see any more council members, and I don't have my glasses on, so forgive me. And we have our Honorable Mayor Wanda R.D. Williams is here. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Heather and Tom.
Thank you, Gina. As Gina mentioned, this is the last of our 4 community meetings to talk about the American Recovery Plan Act and Harrisburg's share of those dollars. I'd like to start by saying start by saying turn off your phones. All right. I'd like to, sure, and come to the mic with questions when we're ready for that. My name is Tom Beckett, and I work with Heather Litzbauer and a team of people at NW Financial. We are a group of people who advise municipalities throughout the northeastern part of the United States on matters fiscal, on budgetary matters, and on financial matters generally. Over the course of the pandemic, we developed an expertise in working with our clients in developing programs and evaluating the expenditure of a lot of the stimulus dollars that have flowed both in 2020 and 2021 and 2022. When the latest round of stimulus, President Biden's American Recovery Plan Act, it's $2 billion worth of funding. $350 million of that is specifically dedicated and allocated to municipalities across the United States. Counties get dollars, school district get another set of dollars, and cities, most importantly, get much needed dollars. What we have found is that within the framework that they put together, there's a lot of ability to address your needs. And what I'll start with and hopefully end with tonight is that this is a community decision on how best to use $47 million. Our job is to guide you through the 437 pages of rules, but our job is never going to be to make a decision. That's fortunately the job of this community. It's elected officials, including the council members who are here, the mayor and her administration, and I'd like to say thank you very much for welcoming us in and asking us to help you with this. We really appreciate the opportunity. As I said before, we're talking about Harrisburg's share of about $350 billion. There's a 437-page document that's the final rule, and the final rule tells us what we can and cannot do. Because it's 437 pages, sometimes, even though Heather and my colleague Julie are the experts on this, sometimes we'll have to say we don't know. And I hope that that's okay, but as Gina said, We meet every morning after these meetings, and we spend time going over the questions that we didn't know about, and we get right back to you. And the city will post the answers to those questions online. Talking about the couple of main objectives of the recovery plan, they're to maintain public services. As an aside, one of the fallbacks, the drawbacks of the recovery plan that President Obama had in 2008 was they didn't spend enough money to maintain essential government services. President Biden's evidently not going to make that mistake. So a big component of this state and local recovery plan is to replace lost revenues. The city can use part of its $47 million to do that. Obviously fighting the pandemic, so any pandemic-related expenses that the city has had or anticipates having, obviously covered by these dollars. And the two, I think, most important things in my mind for any community are to support families, businesses, and communities that are struggling because of the pandemic. This took a toll on everybody, but it took a toll on people that had less to give in the beginning. And I think there's a recognition that needs to be addressed. And that recognition is embodied within those 437 pages of rules. So we'll be talking about communities that are disproportionately impacted, communities that qualify just because they're in a certain census tract, and there's broad latitude in developing programs and making expenditures in communities that are disproportionately impacted. Lastly, there's a whole series of areas that governments could spend money on to create the conditions for long-term and, most importantly, equitable growth. So we're talking about things like broadband infrastructure, water and sewer improvements, those types of things that sustain communities and represent a long-term investment. Low-income housing may be one of those things as well. So those are the four broad areas that the Fiscal Recovery Act covers. Beyond that, there is, as we found out in our 3 previous meetings, there are unlimited amounts of great ideas. And we have heard some really, really interesting ones, and I think we're going to take them back and huddle with the folks downtown and kind of go through the yeses and nos of that. So I'll turn it over to Heather here to talk about some specific eligible uses that we have under the state and local fiscal recovery funds, which is that $350 billion, of which Harrisburg has $47 million.
Before I go into the eligible uses, I just want to touch on the deadlines for the funds. The funds need to be obligated for projects by December 31st, 2024. So you need to know which projects you're going to spend the funds on and how much for each of the projects. And then the funds need to be fully expended by December 31st, 2026. So you have an additional 2 years to spend the funds. And that's mainly because there's a big portion of the final rule that talks about infrastructure projects. We all know construction projects take time to build, so there's additional time for projects to get constructed. There's 4 main areas that the funds can be used for. Public sector revenues, which that is based on the city's budget. It's a revenue loss calculation. There's 2 ways to do that. One, you can take a standard allowance up to $10 million, or there's an actual calculation that can be done on an annual basis every year through 2024 to figure out what the revenue loss is. So Harrisburg has been going through the calculations for that to see how much they can take in as revenue loss. It's very important to look at this category because it gives you additional flexibility to use the funds. Any revenue loss that the city does have, they can take those funds and use it for any government service. So anything that they would normally pay for within their budget, or capital projects that they would do, anything that's denoted as revenue loss can be used for those different projects and expenses. So there's greater flexibility under that category. A next eligible use is public health and economic response. And that's dealing with responding to the pandemic and its economic harms. So that's where you'll find assistance to impacted or disproportionately impacted households, small businesses, nonprofits, and then the public sector, and any negatively impacted industries such as tourism is one example. Some examples of projects under this category is mental health and counseling, affordable housing development, job training, addressing learning loss for K through 12 students. And just to also know, the city of Harrisburg, the school district also received funds, but they're different. They're called ESSER funds. The city received over $50 million, the Board of Education for the school district. So they also have some funds to use for the students in the community. The next section is premium pay for essential workers. So this is for any city employees that worked throughout the pandemic in person. It's defined as receiving up to $13 an hour in additional wages, not to exceed $25,000 per employee. And then the last category is water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. This is dealing with funding for critical infrastructure needs, bringing high-speed broadband to areas of the community that currently don't have it. Some examples of these projects are lead remediation and lead service line replacement, management and treatment of stormwater. Any drainage projects with flooding in the area would be eligible under this. Green infrastructure, any stormwater infrastructure. There's a couple of questions over the last 2 days that we had to go back and research a little bit with the answers. So I want to go over some of them before we start taking your ideas and questions. The first one was about street trees and that they're considered critical city infrastructure. They provide shade to city streets to help alleviate the city heat island effect, help absorb airborne pollutants, help soak up rainwater, and provide a calming influence on neighborhoods. Tree trimming, tree removal, stump grinding, and replanting trees are costly and are often beyond the financial means of many city residents. Would the maintenance of the neglected trees and replanting in city neighborhoods, would that be eligible under the final rule? It's eligible in general, not just in disproportionately impacted communities. On page 281 of the final rule, it talks about stormwater projects and eligible green infrastructure. Part of that is tree boxes, restoration of urban tree canopy, and replacement of gray infrastructure with green infrastructure, including purchase and demolition costs. So part of that is replacing trees with tree boxes, replanting trees within the city, and it's not just to disproportionately impacted communities. It would be eligible for the entire city. The next question is, can the funding be used to contract with Comcast Verizon in order to increase the speed of internet throughout the city? Does the broadband have to be contained to specific qualified census tract areas? So there's two different possibilities on that. One, anywhere within the city, whether it's in a qualified census tract or not, and the city has 16 different tracts, 13 of which are qualified census tracts. So there's 3 within the community that are not. And qualified census tracts are defined as 50% or more of the community within that census tract being 60% or less than the area median income. So anywhere in the city that doesn't have a connection of 100 upload speed and 20 download speed, that would be putting in infrastructure to have broadband in that area would be eligible. Another option is within a qualified census tract, the city could actually pay for individuals to connect to an internet service, whether it be Comcast, Verizon, or another provider. So there's 2 different options there. Another question was, can the funding be used to help people pay their trash bills? And yes, that would be eligible under impacted services. Can the funding be used to help cut down dead trees on senior citizens' properties throughout the city? Yes, that would be eligible as long as the home was in a qualified census tract. Can the funding be used to start small businesses? Part of being a disproportionately impacted area, which if you're in a qualified census tract, you're automatically assumed by the Treasury Department to be disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. One of the eligible uses for small businesses is grants for startup costs or expansions. So small businesses, if they are looking to get off the ground, they could receive a grant from the city. Can the funding be used to pay an interpreter to come in and translate the meetings and community outreach sessions, or to translate for any programs that are put together? Yes, that would be eligible. It would be considered a consultant and administrative fee for the program that's eligible under the American Rescue Plan. So first you have to have an eligible program, and then you could pay for a translator for that program. To what extent can ARP funds be used as matching funds for other federal programs by the city of Harrisburg? And to what extent can ARP funds be used as matching funds for other federal programs for nonprofits acting as sub-recipients? Part of federal guidelines is that any federal funds can't have a non-federal grant matched by federal funds. So if you're receiving $1 million for a certain federal program, the city cannot then use $1 million to match that program. It would have to come out of their own pocket. That's specifically discussed in one area of the final rule. I believe those were all the questions that we had over the last 2 days from the community outreach meetings. So I'd like to open the floor for anyone to discuss their ideas or ask any questions. Just come up to the mic so the people on Facebook Live can hear your question. Yeah. Could you come to the mic here? Sorry.
Hi, so you had mentioned deadlines for when we would need our projects to be in by. So do you have suggestions on like what would be feasible as far as coalescing ideas around projects that we're advancing or like what that timeline would look like or how long that process would be? What would you suggest?
So I believe the city is asking over the next couple of days to get your ideas and questions in so they can be answered. This is the last community outreach meeting, so I think by Monday would be a good deadline to get your thoughts in. There's an email address, I believe it's communications@harrisburgpa.gov. So you can send your questions in there, and then our team will research them and answer back, and they'll be posted on the city's website. So this was the first step in the city's process to have these outreach meetings to see what the community wants to see projects done with these funds. From there, they'll be meeting to discuss all the different ideas and coming up with a list of priorities. Some of the priorities from the last couple of meetings have been affordable housing, help to seniors. They've been here, they continue to live here for their entire lives, so really helping the community. So we'd like to hear your further ideas as well.
Yes, good evening, Gary Lanker. I am the Executive Director of Tri-County Housing Development Corporation. We are a nonprofit community housing development organization, have served in that capacity for the city for our 32 years in existence. I'm standing up, as you mentioned, affordable housing, and I know this administration and the City Council have been very sensitive and proactive on affordable housing, but I will tell you that for those of us in the trenches, there are a lot of challenges, particularly with the costs. I happen to serve on the Board of Directors of the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, which focuses on multifamily housing, and I know that the agency was fortunate with the help of the development community to receive funds from the General Assembly to assist on gap funding for projects that were already approved, and that is something that I think should be given some consideration. Our organization has two different projects that we're working on in the city, finishing a project that's been going on for a number of years on Swatara Street. We have 3 homes to build, which we hope to get started here in the spring, which will then have completed 16 total new homes on that block from the 15th to 16th streets of Swatara. In addition, we have a large project of new construction that we're going to be starting on Hummel Street. We have completed 5 rehabs to date. And I will tell you that the low to moderate income buyer that we represent in utilizing the city's funds, it has become extremely competitive. I mean, the Hummel Street area that we work on is a very challenged neighborhood. We just completed our last rehab there at 247 Hummel Street. And we actually had, this is a 4-bedroom, 1.5 bath, 3-story home, part of a row home that we completed the last unit. The first unit we completed in 2017, and that sold for $69,900. This unit actually is selling for $109,900, and that gives you an idea of the impact that has been made in that neighborhood with support of the city and the work that our organization has done. My point is, we had 5 bids when that house was listed and hit the market. We had 5 low to moderate income buyers who submitted a bid for that home. So I'm just saying that along with the issues that we're dealing with, the lumber and building material crisis and the gap funding and interest rates that are definitely going to rise by the end of this year. And for every 0.25% that interest rates raise, there is a large segment of the buying population, particularly low to moderate income buyers, that are omitted. So some funding for affordable housing certainly would be greatly appreciated. And I thank you for the opportunity. I will answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for that.
Hi, Joe Bedard with Capital Region Literacy Council. We met with the mayor's office to discuss the possibility of funding to buy books for children in the city. The United Way and the Foundation for Enhancing Communities did a community study a few years ago, and they identified 4 areas of need, the greatest areas of need, and one was kindergarten readiness. So impacting the 0 to 5 population before kindergarten. So we focus on that and early elementary age kids, getting books to the kids. So our projects include Hamilton Health, which is the largest health clinic in the area, and those 0 to 5 families get 2 books on their medical wellness visits, and the medical staff gives the message of you gotta get your kid reading. And Head Start, 4 books to every kid. There's 1,150 children in capital area Head Start. Harrisburg School District, we get 2 books to every student in elementary school every year. This year, we just are buying a $17 book for $1.35. It's a best-selling series for pre-K to 2nd grade, and there's 5 books in this one book. Other titles, Pete the Cat is like the Dr. Seuss of today. So we get these for $2. We got one that was 7 stories for 70 cents. We bought 10,000 of them and distributed them to the kids in the area. This was last year's deal. It's Teaching the Alphabet. It's a Disney book, 70 cents for a $12 book. So we have relationships with book suppliers that get the publishers to donate the books to them, and then all we pay is shipping for a lot of the titles we buy, or we get half off about on other titles. So impacting the future workers of tomorrow. So educating the kids is an infrastructure play by building the hard drive as big as you can early, and then the bigger you build it, the more applications they'll be able to add throughout their life. It's like when you buy a computer, they say, how big a hard drive do you want? We want to build the kids' hard drives as early as we can, because 80% of the brain's developed by 3, 90% by 5. So I could go on and on about how important it is to impact these kids and families. And of course, the pandemic slowed reading proficiency. We can give you statistics on reading proficiency scores, and the kids and families need help. So we want to be part of impacting them. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I touched on it a little bit earlier that education loss would be an eligible use, so helping kids that were impacted by the pandemic. I think something to note is that because the school district did receive $50 million as well, that there needs to be communication between the city and the school district, which I know the mayor is having, to make sure that similar programs are not being offered by both, and that if there's a partnership, that could be done so more money can be put together and can go a further way, or they can do things separately. But it's important not to have the same sort of program on 2 different ends doing the same thing. So I know the mayor is in communication not only with the school district, but Dauphin County as well, just to make sure that there's not a duplication of benefits between the different organizations.
Good evening. My counterparts were here yesterday from the CASH, Capital Area Coalition of Homelessness. I'm a representative, actually the executive director for Thrive Housing Services, which is the youth program that is a part of the Capital Area Coalition of Homelessness. My counterparts from BHA and Shalom House were here yesterday. I just kind of wanted to talk on the youth program a little bit to explain what we do, and then explain how the homeless population has been affected, the homeless youth population has been affected by COVID. In 2019 to 2020 school year, in Dauphin County, there was 1,000 1,167 youth and children that were homeless in Dauphin County, and 541 of them are from Harrisburg School District. We work very hard to provide services, rental assistance, independent living classes, housing, budgeting, financing, helping them to get jobs. We use a lot of the community resources to support the youth that come through our program. But the COVID impact has been extremely detrimental to the youth in this area. Our percentage has risen about 25% since COVID started. We lost a lot of the kids because now school is virtual, and we're just coming back to getting into the school districts again to associate with those youth. We don't only receive youth from the school districts, but there are youth that are coming home from foster care. Turning 18, we provide the services from 18 to 24. So our organization has been through a lot, especially because we have multifamily buildings, and we are looking to expand because of the need, and we definitely would appreciate the affordable housing projects to be considered from the cash that have been proposed from the Capital Area Coalition of Homelessness. And I'm so sorry, I was just nervous a little bit.
No, you're fine. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Helping with homelessness is definitely an eligible use. It's specifically stated within the final rule. We have another client that with CARES Act funds, which was given in 2020, their community had a big issue with the homeless population trusting the government, and they didn't want to go into shelters. So what they did during the height of the pandemic was that they put trailers up that had bathrooms and showers so the homeless population could come in and shower, be clean, and start building trust with the community. And then from there, they were able to help and move some people into shelters and into some rental properties. And that was all used with CARES Act funds and then American Rescue Plan funds last year. So there's definitely a variety of ways that you can help the homeless population.
Hi. My name's Mark Pennell. I'm a resident. I actually lived in the area for quite a while, moved away for about 10 years and came back last year. I'm a professional geologist. I work for an engineering company, and I live in the Bellevue Park area. I know that since I returned, there's been a interest in flooding issues, stormwater management. I've actually been involved on a voluntary basis with a group that was working with CRW. So as I travel the city and having past knowledge of the city and where there are flooding problems, where there might be stormwater infrastructure problems, some of the green techniques I think could be very useful. I know that CRW currently has plans to do certain projects. I'm wondering how the eligible green infrastructure money that is coming to the city can flow down into projects, and if those would be through CRW or directly through the city. I know some specific areas where I think there's real validity in doing some green infrastructure to upgrade the stormwater management. Rainfall patterns have changed, infrastructure has been degraded, so use of that money to help improve those systems, I think, will help improve the community.
Well, it's the city's funds, so they could actually do the green infrastructure themselves. Do you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Stormwater management and green infrastructure is absolutely eligible under these recovery funds. It's specifically enumerated. I think the hesitation you hear is a lot of that responsibility is probably likely on the side of CRW, and $47 million is a lot of money, but there's a lot of need for it too. So there's a prioritization that happens. And as we talked about with the schools, the city needs to be aware of what other entities are using their funds for. And I think that CRW as well as the schools are two places where there needs to be a lot of coordination there, because I know that CRW has a significant and growing stormwater management program. And one of the things, particularly with the CSO problems in not only Harrisburg, but in all of the cities throughout the Commonwealth, the scope of that problem is so huge. And as you pointed out, the weather rainfall patterns are changing dramatically. And you could use all $47 million all at once to only partially fix a stormwater management problem that's going to be a decades-long process. So I think there's obviously a need, obviously eligible, but the question is a prioritization question, and that's really what this is a lot about. It's about hearing that and having the mayor and council hear that here, and then have to go back and make those tough decisions about which is most pressing at this point. So I hope that answers your question. It's probably not what everybody wants to hear who's interested in stormwater, as am I. I saw my community get whacked by the flooding in October, and it's not pretty at all. And there are some people that got tremendously impacted by that, and I know that you've had that out here as well. So, any other one?
Good evening. My name is Earl Harris. I live in the city, been a local pastor in the city. And this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity which won't come back again. And there's so many needs, and they're all fantastic and all legitimate. When I look in terms of some of the buckets that money can be used for, can we begin to think about how the city can partner with or create entities, be they for-profit, non-profit, or whatever, which can partner with businesses which can provide services so we can generate additional revenue. For example, instead of inviting Comcast to do everything, can the city create an entity which will partner with them so that everyone in the city will be a part of that, encourage that, so we can create more revenue for the city for the future? Because this $47 million is too small to deal with all the issues. How can the money be used to create more money, is my question. How can the money be used to meet needs, at the same time generate revenue, which is going to help the city go forward? Because our tax base is less than 50%. The state finds ways to not pay their share consistently. So we have a flush of cash at this moment, but in 4 or 5 years, we're going to be back to trying to figure out how we're going to balance the budget. So my question is, again, affordable housing. Can the city create a management company to do the management so there's revenue coming in? Everything that's done, can the city create entities which are going to get revenue as it's coming into to the city so that it can continue to have monies over and above real estate taxes, which is too high, 50% higher than the surrounding townships? That's my overall question. My other question is, and because of the paucity of black and brown businesses and the need to create more opportunity for that, can there be a fund set aside which will be designated not for minority, because that's a term which has been bastardized, and so, but for black and brown businesses so that they can help start businesses and expand businesses. But my first question is the one that really intrigues me. When I think in terms of the broadband and other things we're talking about doing or can be used for, what else fits into that category that you can help create things outside the box so that the city can get additional revenue, so that it can continue to have monies which can help stimulate businesses? The third piece is this: can the city sit down with the banks and say, look, we have X number of dollars, we need for you to come up, work with us, use your CRA capabilities, and also target black and brown businesses and black and brown homeowners, so we get more black and brown homeowners, because the Midtown is a small example of the gentrification which is occurring in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, you name it. And the people who live in those cities, in those areas, who were born there, and not born there, but been there for 30, 40 years, oftentimes can't get CRA money because they don't qualify. Mm-hmm. But so the CRA money doesn't go to the blacks and the browns living in those areas which are being gentrified. They end up going to the white persons who are coming into the area. Now, we need income mix, that's a good deal, but we still should provide an opportunity for the people who are living in those areas to stay there so they can fix up their houses and take advantage of the increased value, because now you're creating an asset which they can then pass on to their heirs. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Harris. There's a tremendous amount to go through there, and I know that Heather will probably answer the first question, which is about whether you can develop programs that generate revenue. I think beyond that, there are, like I said at the outset, there's fairly wide latitude within these buckets to develop programs that are specific to your community. And whether they be home ownership programs or business startup and development programs, whether it's working cooperatively with the bank or the private sector, there is broad latitude to do that. But there's a couple of particular rules about revenue generating entities, and I'll let Heather answer that, because we did have a discussion about that earlier this week.
Sure. So one of the issues from a city budget standpoint with a revenue generating, forming a revenue generating program could be that, one, there's cost to that because you're hiring additional employees, paying insurance, different things. So I think the benefit of the revenue coming in would have to outweigh the costs, number one. Within the final rule, there's discussions about revolving loans. They talk about it in the affordable housing space. So you can provide loans that are paid back, and the money that's paid back, then you can loan it out again for another purpose that's eligible under the final rule. So that's a way to get your dollars to go further. However, the one gentleman talked about how there's a lot of gap funding within affordable housing. So you really need to look at the community and what's best within your community to use the funds and where your dollars can go the furthest. Every community is different, but that is a good idea to look into to see if there's a revenue generating project that the dollars could go further than. And then I think your last point was talking about helping fix homeowners' issues within their homes. That is an eligible use within a qualified census tract. So if there's a boiler that's broken, the city could give funds to fix a boiler, fix windows, a roof. Those are all eligible within the final rule.
Because you spoke about the budgets not being balanced, but this balance that we just passed did not use any ARPA funds. No tax hikes, no one got laid off, nothing. So I didn't understand your question as far as, well, the future's looking pretty bright for the city of Harrisburg. The future is looking pretty bright for the city of Harrisburg. Okay.
Good evening. My name is A.J. Brawley. I pastor the Succum Baptist Church in our city of love and care and compassion for the last 27 years. I stated that I wasn't going to involve myself in politics moving from Philadelphia to Harrisburg. But we have found ourselves, when I say we, struggling with the affairs of the people. About 7 years ago, we established a threefold ministry. And that ministry is the Christian Love Ministries daycare, which has been in existence for the last 12 years. We struggled to meet all of the various criteria and regulations of the city of Harrisburg. But we made it. The threefold ministry is inclusive of the daycare, wherein we support families that do not qualify for no services at all. How can they ever gain independence when there's seemingly no one to assist? Not to sound braggadocious in any regard, but we have done this under the tutelage and the aspiration of the vision that our Almighty God has given us. We started about 5 years ago under the threefold ministry: AJB Drug and Alcohol Ministry, located at 1613 North 5th Street. And I don't mean to be loquacious here, but we do not want to take that route again in the construction and restoration of such a project. We have presently 2 grant writers. We write a ton of grants. Somehow we are politely written back Not at this time. I said, before you denounce what we're proposing assistance for, why don't you come and take a look? How can I better express what it is that we are enduring now? I did state a moment ago, we have a threefold ministry. Somehow, some way, through the volition of God, it will come to manifestation. But with this $47 million, you can certainly put a dent in the problematic encounters that is facing the inner city and its surrounding area. The third phase of our ministry is a safe haven. I can stand here and call a dozen or more names in the city of Harrisburg that we have conversed with. And what we have gotten is verbalization, and that's all. We have constructed many letters. And by having grant writers, they know how to put a letter together, but somehow I can connect with what Pastor Harris allude. There are certain organizations in this city automatically, seemingly, receive dollars and cents. And I know by the time that I've dispensed here, which is about 27, 28 years, we're still seemingly considered an outsider. Totally ludicrous and preposterous. But let me kind of compose my thoughts because, and I don't mean to be loquacious, but you gave me the mic. You gave me the mic. And I need to say this because I want to publicize this matter of interest. And what we do not want to do is dispense of a whole lot of time. I have in my possession, and it pricks my heart when people come to our door at 424 Forster Street and having no place they call home. And what is really devastating to my heart, sometimes they come with children. I have names, and I presented this to the city of the plight that we have personally experienced. Rhetoric, but somehow, under the tutelage and the leadership of our illustrious and esteemed Mayor Wanda Williams, we have an opportunity to avail ourselves in ways that is unimaginable in this city. We have 4 different locations that we are presently looking at. We need funds. Will you help us? I'm going to conclude on this note. And I don't say this in a demeaning way. I am not totally computer savvy. I have a daughter that lives and resides here in this city that is. It ought to be some kind of methodology to simplify the rhetoric. We can do that here in this city. We are the capital city. And I will leave you with this illustration. We all know what an apple looks like. We are the inner mechanism. We are the center. We are the seed. Let's take advantage of our posture of leadership and bring it to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Let me just address some things on nonprofits because we haven't spoken about that yet. There's two areas in the final rule that nonprofits can get aid. One for impacted nonprofits, and two, another for disproportionately impacted nonprofits. If a nonprofit is impacted negatively because of decreased revenue or because of increased costs, whether it be additional cleaning due to COVID, masks, uncompensated increases within different services. So you mentioned an alcohol and drug rehab program. So if due to the pandemic, there was an increased number of people coming into the program, that could be something that's eligible for a loan or a grant to reduce the financial hardship on not only the program, but also your congregation. And that would be whether it's in a disproportionately impacted community or an impacted where you can show revenue loss or increased costs. So there are areas where nonprofits can be helped. So I thank you for bringing that up. Part of the final rule, and this was not included in the interim final rule, but January 6th, the federal government came out with the final rule. We all know that there's been an increase in gun violence and domestic violence due to the pandemic. Those are two different programs too that funds could go towards to help reduce both of those. So I just want to mention those since you brought up some drug and alcohol treatment programs.
Yes, good evening. My name is Melanie Cook, and over the course of this meeting and other meetings that the mayor and her administration have conducted, there have been a large number of very good ideas and recommendations. Is there a procedure or process in place so that if individuals or entities who want to make application for the money can follow a set of guidelines so it will simplify the review process? Because I can imagine there's going to be an overwhelming number of entities that are seeking the money. So that's one of the questions. Is there an application online, or is there an application being prepared that people can follow? Also, reporting requirements. In order to ensure that those individuals who are making application for the money and are getting approved are using it in the way that's the application indicated they were going to use it for. Does the final document indicate methods or make recommendations for government entities as to how they can track the use of the money to ensure that people are actually using it for the stated purposes? And finally, can you go over some of the options that are available to people who may live outside qualified census tracts? Or presumably they are also able to make application for the funds that are available. And the question I have is, under what circumstances can individuals who live in the 3 tracts that are not deemed to be qualified census tracts make application?
Sure. So the first part, this is the beginning process to get ideas. After that, the mayor and council will be meeting to discuss, the next steps and what they would like to do. So there isn't an application process at this time. Once something is decided on, and if there is an application process or a program put together, then there'll be further outreach to make you aware of the programs, whether that's online or through some other method. Talking about the 3 areas that are not within a qualified census tract, it's hard to give you all the options unless I know what you're thinking. But if, like I said before, an impacted nonprofit, you would have to show decreased revenue or increased costs to get any financial assistance. Impacted households, those are defined by the Treasury as low to moderate households, low to moderate income households. So that's 65% or below of the area median income. Or households that are experiencing unemployment, housing insecurity, food insecurity. And then any households that qualify for certain federal programs. So Section 8 housing, SNAP, if you're SNAP eligible, there's a list of, I think, 8 different federal programs that if you are receiving assistance under this, then you are automatically considered an impacted household. Impacted households, there's a few different examples of things that you would be eligible for. Food assistance being one of them, reemployment and job training, rent, mortgage, and utility assistance and internet subsidies, cash assistance, affordable housing development, and then childcare, early learning, and addressing learning loss within the K through 12 community. So that's for impacted households. So that's not necessarily within a qualified census tract. For small businesses that are not within a qualified census tract, you'd have to, just like nonprofits, have a decrease in revenue, increase in costs, or have financial insecurity, and they would be eligible for loans or grants to mitigate the financial hardship, or technical assistance, counseling, or other services to support business planning for the future. I don't know if you have any specific questions on eligibility for households or small businesses within that are not in a qualified census tract, but those are some examples. If you think of any questions later on, you can just email and we could tell you whether something would be eligible or not.
I think you can follow up a little bit with Pastor Rowley's question as well. And the other pro question. As Heather mentioned, this is the beginning of a process. And we're taking the lead from our client, which is the city of Harrisburg and its elected officials, as to what direction you want to head with that. I'll give you an example. One of the things that Pastor Rowley is, I think, alluded to is a process that's open and transparent, right? And one of the things that both Heather and I have done in the past is, at our client's request, we put together grant programs for small businesses, grant programs for municipalities with the CARES Act funding from 2020. And working with our client, we put together a set of eligibility criteria, and we put together an application process and an online portal. We did the initial screen of eligibility on behalf of our clients, and then brought the projects and the people and the list of eligible recipients of those dollars up to our clients to make their final decisions on that. So I think that's one of the things that could be down the road, again, given direction from our client. We have the capacity to do that, to undertake that type of program that is open and fair and has known rules at the outset.
think too, it's important to note that we're doing this for a variety of different clients, and this is the only one that's having community outreach meetings and really want to hear from the public your ideas. So that's the start of a transparent process. A lot of other communities just make decisions on what they think is best for the funds, but the mayor and council are really here listening to what you have to say and what you think is needed in the community. So I think that's a great step in the process. And we're doing this for maybe 20 entities, and this is the first community outreach meetings that we've been to.
Hi, my name is Jim Spatz, and I wanted to ask about a specific idea as far as cooperative housing, like a housing co-op, if that kind of organizational structure is something that could work with this money, or would it be too difficult to get those funds obligated and spent within the timelines that you talked about? But I see that as being a way where renters could hold on to their rent essentially by buying a share of a housing co-op, and then when they move, they would be able to sell their share, and then they wouldn't have lost that rent money. They would have built it up over time, and that would be like an affordable housing strategy, but it would require more organizational kind of aid and structure to help that happen. But I was wondering if that could be a potential use.
I don't think I have an answer for you at this time on that, but we will go back and research that, and we'll put it as part of the Q&As that go online. Yes, yeah. Yeah, I think it was 2 people behind you. Yeah. Does anyone else have questions, comments?
I want to thank you and the city for putting this on. It's so vital, so important to get community input. And I thank the city for also working with the Impact Harrisburg and the county to create a disparity study. And one of the things, again, thinking long term, is that the disparity study may take about a year or more to get done. And my question is, can we think in terms of, on infrastructure deals, which are desperately needed. I've lived in the city since 1977. I've never seen a black or brown firm do any public work in this city, ever. And I've never seen a black or brown firm do any subcontracted work on public works in this city. And the disparity study won't allow for the setting of goals and et cetera, probably, until it's done. Can we think in terms of setting money aside for these larger deals until the infrastructure, that disparity study is completed, so that black and brown firms and workers will have a chance to get a piece of that money? Because most of the time, the money that's spent on public works is for firms outside the city, for people living outside the city. So the money doesn't get turned over in the city as readily. And this administration is doing something which has never been done before, which is opening the door for people of color to participate in the economic development, and in public works and things of that nature. And for that, I'm deeply grateful.
Hi, my name's Laura Harding. I'm a resident of this neighborhood. And I just like to agree with everything, all the comments that I've previously heard, particularly from the two pastors. I would say that it would be really, really upsetting to see the same nonprofits that we know of are headquartered like downtown get awarded this money. So I would like to know, well, one of the things that gives those organizations an advantage is that if you go and review their 990 forms, which I do, they have an enormous amount of money that they are sitting on. But they don't like to spend that money. They don't want to spend their money. They want to spend the money that they'll get from the government, federal government in this case. So they also have an advantage where they can hire consultants, accountants, lawyers to write these applications for them. And that's how they get the money. They have experts that they can hire to do it for them. So I would like to know is, can we use some of this money to set up workshops, to have consultants, pay consultants to help members of our community who are very deserving of this money, who never get it, to help them write the applications? Could that be a reimbursable expense, for example, after we get the money? Because it's unfair that all these same organizations and firms have access to people to help them get this money, and the people who are very deserving of it and need it the most never do. So, and I will say that I will be the first person standing in front of City Hall protesting if I see the same organizations get this money over and over again. like they're the same ones who got the PPE money, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that's something that I would like to see happen. People need help. The people who are left behind need this money the most. And this community will never get ahead if we don't help the people who need the help the most. We're not going to improve this community and help people, give people a leg up if we keep giving the same money to the same developers over and over again. That's all. Thank you.
That's a very good question. To answer it, Denise Hill, who is the Director of Building, Housing Development, and Economic Development. She is putting together workshops so that she can educate the people on how to write your grant so that you can probably benefit from the workshops to move further up on the chains. But she is also seeing the same thing that you're saying, that the same people apply for the money. Not sure if there's any new people in here or new people that you may know, but she's encouraging new people to apply for the funds so that they can spread it around. So that's what she's working on at this time. She has a whole department. She works for the city. Denise Hill, 255-6411.
In one of the communities that we did a rental and mortgage assistance program, we actually had one of our employees sit at City Hall on certain days, and it was publicized on the website in the application because not everyone has access to computers. The senior population, a lot of them don't know how to use computers. So we had actually 2 people sitting at City Hall helping people that came in to fill out the application. One spoke a couple of different languages as well, so they could help with different people that needed translating services. So there's definitely things that can be done to help people fill out different applications and stuff. You can't not provide those services to everyone, though. It has to be available to everyone that's looking to apply. Any other questions, comments? We did that first. If anyone has any questions or comments over the next couple of days, just be email communications at harrisburgpa.gov, and we will get to those questions and answer them right away. We meet frequently as we have 5 people in our team at NW that go over all these questions and look up within the final rule to get the specific part that's eligible within the final rule for different programs. So we encourage you to ask questions, provide us your comments on how you want to use the funds.
Well, people, this has been a long, drawn-out process, but a process that was well needed. Appreciate your comments, your concerns, your questions were great, some rather long, but great indeed. But I know our work is cut out for us. You guys got some good ideas, and I really appreciate your question. I can't remember your name, but you're my newfound friend from City Council. Zoning Board, that's correct. Because we too see that sometimes the same people get money and others don't. But there's a new administration in right now, and a lot of things are going to be changing. So it's not to say we guarantee you that you're going to get a whole bunch of money, but your grant applications and process is going to be looked at a little differently now. But with that being said, I'm going to bring our wonderful Honorable Mayor Wanda R.D. Williams to the microphone so that she may elaborate.
She's on my next list now. Take your phone, so I have to take you back home. Good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing? Yeah, quite a few questions here. Obviously, the former administration did not make you aware of things that's happening in the city of Harrisburg. At this structure and point, we have 2020 money. That means we have money from the federal government. Because of the pandemic, we were not able to spend. So any nonprofit out here that you went to the mic tonight and you're asking for money, you don't have to wait until we make a decision regarding the American Rescue Plan money. We have money right now. You can reach Denise Hill and ask for an application. We are starting the process. And again, October the 1st, we have additional money coming in. So if you're in need of money, please put application in. And when you talk about all the nonprofits that we get, it's a shame that nonprofits are not aware of what the city has under the CDBG money. Now, I look at that too, as a council president for 12 years. That's one of the questions I always asked. Where are the other nonprofits in the city of Harrisburg? And most of our nonprofits are not knowledgeable of how to fill out an application, so therefore they're afraid and they don't do it. So I encourage them to please come fill out the application to receive some of the money. We are going to have the workshops. We have people who are going to be available to help you fill out the application. maybe walk you through the process. And I'm sure, Reverend Brawley, you know that, right? Okay. Because you come every year. And also, when you talk about the city as far as MBE, WBE involvement, Mr. Harris, Reverend Harris, I'm sorry, I now have someone in place. His name is Carl Singleton. He is my Chief Officer of Equity, Diversity, and Compliance, which we are watching very, very carefully how developers come into the city and not include our MBE, WBE partners. So be assured that we are watching that. Another thing I want to address is the gun violence and domestic violence. Of course, we already know gun violence and domestic violence right now to date. Within the last couple of weeks, we had 2 or 3 occasions of domestic violence as well as gun violence. We are trying to put together a forum of individual law enforcement around the area to try to work this out. And that is inclusive of our Lancaster commissioner, also our Carlisle commissioner, our York commissioner, because they all are African-American men who are commissioner of police departments. So we want to hear their ideas and try to work together with them. So that's one of the things we're going to try to do is work on our gun violence as well as our domestic violence, as well as educating our female women here and some of our males, because sometimes males are partners of domestic violence, about where you need to go and who you need to call. I want to address also, when we talk about green infrastructure and stormwater. Of course, you know CRW now went through a process of now looking at areas where they concentrate first, which is the Cameron Street corridor. Of course, everybody knows about McClay Street, coming off the McClay Street Bridge. If you come down it, you're gonna get stuck right there by the farm shop. So that's one of their priorities where they're looking at, and they've also are going to be borrowing money to start working on our infrastructure project here in the city of Harrisburg. They knew when they took over that project, that stormwater and sewer, that we have antiquated storm and sewer systems. We have community residents who are 5 on a party line, who are responsible when their sewer line breaks, that they have to pay for it themselves. So we are going to address that. Most recently, I met with them. We're going to collaborate a little bit and try to reach out and try to work with some grants through the federal government to try to get additional monies to try to make sure that every part of the city of Harrisburg is going to be addressed. And then we talk about, I have to, okay, infrastructure. I want to make sure I touch on everything. Oh, when you talk about the Capital City Literacy Council, we're addressing the kindergarten and early childhood. We are meeting with the Harrisburg School District Superintendent. We're working together to try to make sure that we come up with a program that we can address literacy in the city of Harrisburg. I did have a meeting with him today, but he canceled. So we're looking at rescheduling to sit down and work out ways that we can collaborate with the city as well as the county. It's a new sheriff in town, everybody. Okay? And, oh, you know my name. And we're working with the county. The county has come over to the city of Harrisburg. We met, and they are excited about working together, trying to put our funding together to work on different projects. So we do have people coming out of the woodwork now. I don't know because of my beautiful face or, you know, whatever, but anyway, we have help. So look forward to the things that we're going to do, and we're always going to involve everyone in the community because I've always been transparent, and I think most of my council members have always been transparent. They've been available to meet and discuss at any particular time, any issue that you have. We have a great council. I look forward to working with them and getting things done in the city of Harrisburg. Thank you.
Okay, she's kind of a hard act to follow, so therefore, this meeting is adjourned.